partners, we are back with a new episode of Unfinished Business. You might notice I have a new look. I had a nice little makeover. Thanks to a friend of the show at Yumi Muse on Instagram. Or if you want to get your hair done or makeover done, feel free to contact her at monster.muse on Instagram. So we got that out of the way. And that's my plug. And with me, as always, for our show of Unfinished Business Television is Andre Joseph at AJ Epics.
Let's make lots of money.
Yes, let's try to. This is our news show, or this episode is our news and revelations or trailer show. As you know, the strikes are still going on, writers and SAG, so there isn't that much news, but trust me, we can pack this show with plenty of stuff to talk about. So, to start off, let's talk about, the strike. Productions being shut down. Some films are actually getting waivers. Viola Davis was working on a film that got a waiver, but in solidarity with SAG, she decided, she's going to stand with, her fellow thespians, and she's not going to do the film. So, Andre, what do you have to say about the strike?
So, I'm kind of split when it comes to actors working. I feel like, yes, not everybody is an A-list star making 15, 20 million per picture, and you got to take what you can get. So I feel bad for a lot of guys and actresses that have to literally take second jobs until the strike is over. So yeah, if you get a waiver to do a small indie film and it's not going to be something that, gets you in trouble, why not take the chance and keep your career going? But I also do feel this is a bigger fight than any strike that I've seen before, because this really is about the fact that these guys get pennies for their residuals. You have the AI threat, and this is something you just can't back down on. I think this is a very big turning point in Hollywood where actors really do need to take a stand for their livelihood, because these studios, as their technology is changing and they're looking for ways to save on cost while trying to make extra money for streaming platforms and so forth, and theaters shrinking as they are, this is a fight that needs to be had. And, again, actors need to work. So I don't want to take offense to somebody that has to do it in the midst of a strike, but I could also understand the other argument against that. The idea of, you're going to work while we're fighting for our livelihood. So yeah, I'm kind of caught between the two on that front.
Well, I support, obviously, the strike, and I understand, but in the long run, even though they might have, some actors might have to take second jobs, ultimately, if this works out in their favor, it hopefully will guarantee they might not ever have to take second jobs again, and getting paid, what they earned basically over the years, because, the whole thing with the streaming coming in, that's where everybody started earning pennies. Whereas in the past, when your show was on network television, I'm not saying you never had to work again, but you could make a livelihood for a little while between jobs off of those residual payments. So I can understand that. Some films are getting waivers. I think an Anne Hathaway movie got a waiver. Kevin Smith's is, about to start production on a film because, the script was written before the strike. And, it's independent under a certain amount of money. So, he applied for a waiver and surprisingly got one. So, you have productions like that. And, again, Viola Davis can afford to, drop out of a movie. It's not going to hurt her pocket as much. Whereas, somebody, again, who's maybe lower on the totem pole of that movie, you have to worry about, because if they turn down work, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Especially if you have a family and other responsibilities. And then you have people like Stephen Emil, who's totally, does not support the strike, or at least the striking part. I guess he agrees that people should get paid, but he did not like the fact that, I guess everything is shut down in striking, and sees it as I guess, kind of a turnaround or juvenile. Yeah. So, the weird thing, though, is in the long run, he'll probably benefit from it. But, the thing is, once the strike ends, will the actors and writers remember him and be like, oh, yeah, you were the guy who said what we were doing was stupid, but now you want to benefit off of it?
I don't think they forget that easily.
No, it's Hollywood. Of course not. Unless it's marketable. That's the only way it will be, that way. I mean, and, you have also, as a result of this, studios scrambling. They say everything is okay, but you notice how movies are getting way pushed back. Some are dropped off even the release schedule totally. You have, Aquaman on its, third reshoot, and it's getting pushed back again. You had the Zendaya movie Challengers that was supposed to open the Venice Film Festival, now pushed back all the way to April of next year. You have Craven, the Hunter, pushed back. I don't know if any. I'm sure there were fans who were like, "Ooh, I'm really looking forward to this," but I don't think that was quite the kick in the nuts that people thought it was going to be. Like, oh no, not Craven in 23. I gotta wait till 24.
And not only wait till 24, you have to wait till next August. They're giving this some New Mutants treatment.
I'm like, this movie, for the studio, they should have just released it in January of next year, where there's usually, the graveyard, where it might have a good, week or two, and then, quickly forgotten.
Work for Morbius.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, this could be a surprise, hit. Maybe it'll be of quality, and maybe, other than that, and in the union, one of the main things of the union is that now Netflix has a new job opening for an AI manager for $900,000 a year.
Yeah, that's a bad sign when you're trying to keep business going, and yet here we are now taking away jobs from people who should be out there developing the content, not going and hiring a computer to dish it out in 5 seconds. So this is what we're fighting for right now, and this is not a good look, especially Netflix. They try to push diversity, they try to push being all innovative, but we're going to also take away people's jobs too in the process, in the midst of a strike. Something's not connecting here.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, they also recently stopped development on a Masters of the Universe movie that they had already spent $30 million on. And it's just like, Netflix, if you have this much money to throw at things, you're telling me you can't pay residuals?
That's honest to God truth.
That's the whole thing with the studios. They keep making much more money, but they want to tighten the reins, supposedly, and claim they can't afford it. So they're only doing this many productions, but you can't. At this point, the studios seem to have lost more money than what people were asking for in the first place, as far as a fair wage. So it's like now it just feels like the studios don't want to appear to be weak to anybody, and that's their whole reason. Like, no, we're not giving in. But it's just like, this is ridiculous. The product you do have is being pushed back, and maybe a few of your productions can go through, but how are you going to keep making new stuff? Are you going to depend on AI purely? Is that it?
Yeah, I have to laugh at people like David Zaslav and some of these other studio heads, Bob Iger, who go and say, "Oh no, the strike is good for us. We're actually making more money than we ever had." But you guys have spent between $250 to $300 million on a bunch of movies that have tanked this year, and now actors are not working, so they can't go out, they can't promote. All these shoots that have been shut down completely until this is over and done with. And you think like, oh yeah, we're doing fine, there's no problem, we got plenty of content to dish out. But if you don't have these people coming out, your movies are going to bomb. And the less content that you have for the theaters, the theater chains are going to suffer. And right now we're going into a full season for television where there's barely going to be anything new. It might just be mostly reality shows and news and sports. But as far as scripted content, both for streaming and for network television, there ain't going to be shit. So I can't see the upside for them.
Neither do I, but, they pressed through in the past when it looked like there were disasters. So I guess that's just the regular studio thing. I guess maybe we'll start seeing movement in September and October because, according to them, that's when they predicted that, writers will start losing their homes. And I'm just like, that's your bargaining chip? Yeah,
that's just fucked up.
Exactly. That does not sound very humanitarian of you, as you keep trying to make it sound. And I mean, while you can keep putting out, I guess you're already shot Marvel shows and Star Wars because you have endless, it seems like, things. But you also got to keep in mind, the people who aren't really paying attention to media probably are like, oh yeah, there's a strike, whatever. But they're going to start feeling that pinch come soon when they start noticing like, oh, there's nothing really for me to go see, or why is that movie still in theaters, because the theaters are going to need it just to make some money. It's just like currently, if you haven't seen a movie, it's great because there's plenty to see. But if you're like a regular movie watcher in theaters, this upcoming month, there's nothing really that big for you to go out and go see.
And most of what is coming out is most of these movies that, some of which, like Blue Beetle, that were intended for streaming, that they're like, oh, well, we're going to put out theaters because we don't want to waste our money putting it on Max or putting it on Disney Plus. And those movies are not going to perform well because they're going to be out on HBO Max in a week. So why bother spend $50 on it?
Exactly. So that's why, this is bad for all involved. And really, the people who are holding the keys to ending all this don't seem to want to come to the bargaining table at all. And,
Yeah, it's just proof that the studios are not run by real movie people anymore. The Lou Wassermans, the Bob and Terry Semel, Bob Daly, those guys are gone. It's all just a bunch of bankers and lawyers who look at the bottom line. And yes, the old guys used to look at the bottom line too, but they actually cared about the filmmakers and cared about the movies they were putting out. They weren't like, oh, we need content to fulfill ours. Now it's just guys that are like, oh, why is TCM still in existence? We're not making the money on it. Let's get rid of it. They're counting pennies and numbers. They're not looking at it from a cultural zeitgeist perspective.
No. All they care about, unfortunately, is money. And you want to make money, but it's like, but we want to tighten the belts. But yet, again, you'll spend, $200 million on a disaster project like The Flash. But, when it comes to something of quality, you all of a sudden want to cheapen everything. Or your television, division, you want to cut costs, after these people have brought you money and success all these years. And then you're like, oh, thank you. Let's cancel your show. Or if you want to go another year, you guys got to take pay cuts. It's like, how does that work? Because my thing, I noticed they want everybody to take pay cuts, but they themselves will not give up even 10 or 12% of their earnings. So to me, that's just like ridiculous. Well, speaking of AI, writer-director Paul Schrader has said that after watching the latest Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, he felt like it was written by AI. I think it's because, in his opinion, it lacked character. It was all about, the goal. And I mean, let's face it, the main villain is AI program, computer. So it's like, it is a little ridiculous. And even though they try to give the film part, it does feel a little cold,
Yeah, I mean, we'll get more into Mission Impossible when we talk about it in our review, but I could see where he's coming from with that from watching the movie. Yeah, but it's not a new thing where we might as well just get into this part of it now. But from what Chris McQuarrie said in interviews, much of Mission Impossible's script was essentially we have the sequences all mapped out. We just have to build the story around those sequences. That's not a new thing necessarily. They did it with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where basically most of the stunts were intended for Raiders and they just transported it into Temple of Doom. The Bond films have done the same thing. A lot of times they come up with the ideas for the big set pieces and then they kind of build around the story. But now, if we are talking about that idea of just punching in some text in AI, and then that's what your story is going to be based on, Tom Cruise's latest stunt, yeah, that's kind of an issue if you don't have this thing mapped out. And again, we'll get into Dead Reckoning, but they got some work to do, given that this is a two-parter.
Yes, and he also called Oppenheimer the most important film of, I guess, coming out in current cinema.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And I know you haven't seen it yet, so obviously we're not going to review, but I will say that for a movie that, yes, it's a Christopher Nolan film, and it's pretty epic and long, but as a historical film that counter-programmed Barbie and doing as well as it's doing, yeah, I think it is important. And it's not a tent pole. It's not an IP. It's a biopic. It's a historical piece, and it's one that is relevant with a lot of what's going on today. So yeah, I damn think not only is it an important movie, but it's probably going to be a serious Oscar contender.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously there was a pandemic at the time, but this movie even seems like it's going to be even more successful than Tenet financially.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, by far.
But for those wondering why maybe it's sometimes hard to hear the dialogue in Christopher Nolan's movies, he finally said that he basically doesn't do any ADR. So that might be why in certain scenes the score is like, you can hear the score more than you can actually hear what anybody is saying. And
listen, I'm guilty of not always doing ADR in my films. I've done it when it's necessary, and then other times I just let the original recording go as is. I still try to keep the damn thing as balanced as possible so the music's not overpowering the dialogue. Come on, Chris. You're smarter than this. You have all this long exposition, especially when you do a Tenet or an Inception, and you're getting into all this kind of crazy sci-fi, high-tech language, and we're trying to follow every word you're saying, but then when you have like the big Hans Zimmer score over it, it's like you're completely throwing me off. Dude, come on, you're better than this.
Yeah, I can only speak of Tenet because I didn't see Oppenheimer. But yeah, Tenet, I will admit, it at times it felt like it was more trying to be a music video because you're hearing this score, seeing these great visuals, but what is anybody saying? Who knows? And then you have this complex, a film where you're introducing all these ideas and sci-fi elements, and then you can't hear half the information when it's given, so you're like, huh? So
I'll put it this way. Our friend Paul Talbot would attest to this, but with Death Wish 5 of all movies, Charles Bronson did not do any ADR, and yet if you watch the film, there's like a scene or two where you could hear the microphone getting bumped on. So that pretty much tells you Charles Bronson would not do ADR for his movies.
Well, if he was alive, him and Christopher Nolan would have gotten along greatly. Since neither seemed to believe in it.
He would have made the ultimate Charles Bronson movie.
Well, maybe the whole thing with Christopher Nolan is maybe that's part of his, like, one of his master strokes of his artistry is like, no ADR, like how some others might have, extreme close-up shots, dolly shots that last forever. His is no ADR.
He's just very pretentious.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure there's a method behind the madness. Hey, he's putting his stamp on these movies, then I just like it. Just feels like incomplete homework. It's like, okay, we're gonna give you all this money for your movie. Just dot the I's and cross the T's, and then at the end, it's like, wait, you didn't do any ADR? Like, did you put that money somewhere else other than your pocket?
He probably runs out of money by the time he gets to ADR. Look at all the money he spends on the screen.
Well, maybe that is his excuse. Like, we spent so much money, we couldn't afford ADR, man.
He doesn't do any real CGI, except maybe for a few parts here and there. So maybe that's where all the money goes, is the real stunts, the real practical shit. And then it's like, okay, well, audio, somebody else can handle that. And there are filmmakers like that, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, on the plus side, on Dunkirk, he didn't really have to worry about ADR because just pretty much people running and shooting. So, in other news, well, Gal Gadot says she's in discussions with James Gunn, Peter Serafian for a Wonder Woman sequel.
I am so lost, and I just am so freaking confused as to, is this a restart, or is this simply, oh, well, we're going to carry some things over and then everything else will be brand new? I really don't understand. Like, didn't they just hire a new publicist for James Gunn and everybody at DC so they could kind of get their messaging straight? Because now I'm also hearing these conflicting reports that, oh no, whatever she's saying is kind of BS. They have no plan for Wonder Woman 3. It's going to be a whole new restart. Why would they want to bring back the people from the last regime and have them transported into the new regime when they really should be starting over with a bunch of actors that are much more cheaper to hire, that they can get long term while they're still in their 20s? Why are we going back to the well? I understand Wonder Woman made $1 billion and Wonder Woman 84. Not Gal Gadot's fault. Clearly the fault of Patty Jenkins and the way that movie was written. But come on, guys. It's like, is this a restart or is it not? Because this is why your brand is so damaged right now, that people are not running out to see the next DC film.
Well, unfortunately. And there is also now that in Aquaman 3, they nixed a Batman cameo in it.
Yeah, so actually it was intended for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the second movie that hasn't come out yet. Mm-hmm. The story was that originally when they were shooting the movie, they were going to bring in Michael Keaton's Batman, when the plan was for Keaton to be carried over past the Flash and have him be like the Nick Fury of the new direction of the DCU. And then with all the changes going on, they're like, oh, let's go back to Affleck because everybody likes Affleck. Maybe we'll try our hand at Zack Snyder's universe again. And then James Gunn came in and said, no, this is the end of the line. We're going to keep this as a standalone, and then we're moving on with a new actor. So, yeah, this was... I don't think the signs for this movie are good at all. No. Between the Amber Heard controversy and the fact that this movie has been subject to like 3 or 4 different reshoots since they finished shooting 2 years ago and have constantly shuffled the release date for this movie, you have people who are like, oh, it's still going to make $1 billion because the women love Jason Momoa. They want to see him with the shirt off. But they said the same kind of deal with The Flash. They thought it was going to make a lot of money despite Ezra Miller's problems, and look what happened with that shit. And Blue Beetle's not looking any better. So Aquaman, by all accounts, has not tested well, and it's not really that great of a first film to begin with. It's like how everybody ran to see that first Ninja Turtles movie, the Michael Bay one, but they didn't come out for the second one because they saw it again and were like, yeah, this was shit. We're not going to go pay to see a sequel. So, it's just a mess over there with DC, as I've said before, and I don't think this is really going to be a high note for their swan song of the Snyderverse.
Well, it's a shame because, Jason Momoa seems like a very nice guy, an affable guy, so he deserves better than this. So much so that he had to go over to Fast and Furious and be a villain in the time it's taken for this movie to come out, And I take it he will probably be in 11, even though I haven't seen X, so I can't say.
I haven't seen X either.
Well, things that aren't helping is Zachary Levi still blaming everybody for the bombing of Shazam 2. Now he's saying that it was, online hate for the film, and that it was toxic fans. The reason why the movie wasn't successful. It could just be maybe the movie wasn't that satisfying. It didn't look that great in the trailers, and then when it comes out, it's not, it's not horrible, but it's also not like, oh, this is the sequel we've all been waiting for, either. And
it wasn't a movie that I was willing to spend money to see in the theater. Even though I liked the first Shazam, there was nothing here that got me all excited. And again, James Gunn comes in. He announces his plan. And Shazam is not announced in those plans as far as anything that they're going to do moving forward in the future. So, you know what? I'm not going to blame Zachary Levi here for the film's failure. It's simply the change in the management. You have The Rock saying the same thing, like, oh, we thought we had all these big plans with Black Adam, and it got caught in this vortex with the regime change, and they told me, oh, no, we're not going to keep Black Adam around because your movie didn't make any money. But we're happy to discuss future possibilities with this character down the line. It's just, again, there's a messaging issue with DC. And Zachary Levi is really shooting himself in the foot. This used to be such a nice, sweet guy from that show, Chuck. And he was likable in everything he was doing, like that Chipmunk sequel and when he was in the Thor movies. And now all of a sudden, like, he's almost showing his true right-wing colors, that he hates vaccinations and he's kind of anti-strike. Like, what happened to you, dude? Did you have a talk with Chris Pratt? He put something in your water and now you're like a complete asshole? Like, come on, man.
No, he just starts reading Jordan Peterson books. At
this point, I think you shot yourself in the foot for Shazam 3.
If they were ever going to be. But also, just, you're shooting yourself in terms of, like, public likability and fandom. Because my thing is, okay, we can all be set when maybe a movie we really put our heart into bomb, but we move on. It's like, how long has it been since Shazam 2 came out, and you're still complaining about it? Like, Rachel Ziegler said what she had to say. Hey, I took the job for money, and she moved on to the next project. She didn't say anything bad about the film or why it bombed. She just admitted, hey, I needed a paycheck. They called. I took it. And now I'm going on to, Snow White and Hunger Games movie prequels. So it's like, it like you said, it's bad management, but also, as an actor, you should just understand this is what comes with the business sometimes.
It's just no different for Ray Fisher. Just let it go. It was a long time ago. You had better opportunities if you stop talking.
They can make their own DC Suicide Squad force of actors still pissed about lost opportunities.
I'm sure there's a meme out there somewhere with all the actors like him and Henry Cavill and everybody else who ever complained. Sad Ben Affleck.
Joe Manganiello, because he never really got to do Bloodsport or Deathstroke, whatever the character was. So stuff like that. To finish off how the strike has impacted things, the Emmys has been postponed to a date unknown. Some are saying January of next year, which, it fits in with award season, but it's usually movie award season, and we're like, now we're just getting to television. And also, it might be also, like you said, because obviously this TV season is going to be wrecked. That, these Emmys might have to represent or take the place of the current television season coming up.
I'll tell you the truth. I'm all for it. Delay the Emmys, delay the Golden Globes, which really nobody gives a shit about anymore. Delay the Oscars. Don't do any award show until you get this stuff resolved. This is more serious than giving accolades and having a big suck fest again. You know, this is people's livelihoods. And we're not talking just about the A-list stars that are the top of the food chain when it comes to media and press. We're talking about those guys that have no name in the business, that are struggling to get those big opportunities, that have to take those second jobs. You know, I always think back to Jeffrey Owens from The Cosby Show, that whole thing where they were mocking him because he was working in a supermarket. Well, fuck those people, because not everybody has that opportunity. When a guy like that, who was on a hit show, despite the controversial star, and doesn't get enough money from residual checks, that they have to go work at a Trader Joe's. There's some humility to that, and I respect him for that, but there is something wrong with this system if a good, hardworking actor who may not have Tom Cruise's agent has to take a second job working in the post office or in the fucking supermarket. Something's got to be done. Fuck the awards.
Okay. Tell us how you really feel.
That's my talk.
And, Christopher Landon, interestingly, is replacing Radio Silence as the director for Scream 7. And I have no problems with this, because I guess at this point, the Scream saga, as ridiculous as it's getting, kind of fits into his kind of style of meta and more humor with the violence. My concern is they're actually making a 7. But I'd like to see it handled in new hands, so maybe it'll feel a little more classic. But also, you know, Radio Silence is off. They might be rebooting the Escape from New York reboot again. And they also have their monster movie. So I know Melissa Barham was kind of being cast in that monster movie. So is she coming back for 7?
Yeah, very good question. I think likely, because they have to wrap up the whole story. And I do think she's going to probably turn heel and they make Jenna Ortega the star, if they pay her, because I think she's going to ask for a big pay bump for the next one. It's a decent choice. The guy who did, was it Freaky or Freaked?
Freaky and Happy Death Day. And
Happy Death Day. Yeah, he's not a bad choice. He'll probably have either the girl from Happy Death Day or Catherine Newton get killed off in the beginning, just like they did with Samara Weaving in Scream 6. That's my bold prediction on that. I just wonder what the theme is going to be, if they're going to... I don't know. Like, we did the New York thing. We already went back to Woodsboro in the movie before that. I think it's got to be like on a cruise liner or someplace in a foreign country or the Caribbean somewhere. Let's just take this shit up.
I say Los Angeles, going on like Maxine's territory, only modern day. But no,
yeah, but we did that with 3 already when they went to Hollywood.
Well, why not? That gives us a perfect way of bringing Parker Posey back. And
I want a movie that gets into how every freaking killer uses the same voice changer and knows the exact voice to use. We need to get to the source of that, because I bet there's like some supernatural shit you could do with that angle. That's my pitch for Scream 10.
No, because my thing is, maybe if we were talking Scream 1 and 2, but with the internet, people can find out little known facts, can buy stuff underground. So that's why I'm like, I say no for that. And I feel like if you do a cruise ship or a vacation, now we're going to I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Well, they could do a better version of Speed 2.
No, I say I don't have any ideas for where Speed 7. I mean, at this point, since we're up to 7, there's no way you can make anything plausible. You know,
no.
And you can't have a movie geek talking about, well, in part 7 of this, it's like, really? You know, oh, and you have to kill off one of the main cast members finally.
Yeah, so people got to go at this point.
And it's not looking good for the football player.
No.
You know, I'm like, you have been stabbed way too many times.
He should be on dialysis.
It's like, you are not the new Dewey. You know? And I love you, Courtney Cox. Other than a cameo, please do not come back.
Yeah, unless they do something new with Gail Weathers, stay home. Don't even get involved.
You
Do
know,
what Nev Campbell did. Like, oh yeah, she just heard what happened. So she hightailed with her kids someplace in some far distant country. Like, fuck this shit. I'm not coming to New York today.
and please, to make a 7 iconic, do not kill off Gail or Sydney.
Yeah, no.
Let them finally be free of this, if anything, you know. And next story, almost done with the stories, guys. Oh man, it's a pretty non-starter. James Mangold Star Wars movie will predate the Jedi and the Jedi Order.
I'll keep it as simple as possible. I don't think this is going to happen. Not after Indiana Jones.
This could be his comeback. Though
I think there's going to be a mass exodus of Lucasfilm in 1 year, and most of these projects are not going to get made despite all their announcements. Because they've announced like 12 projects that never got made. So how do I know this is actually going to happen? They always pull this gaslighting shit, just like how they said, oh, we're going to do the Lando series. Then Justin Simeon basically says, oh, no, I haven't spoken to them about that in 2 years.
Oh,
and
right.
we found out the other day, Donald Glover's writing it. Yeah. So this guy basically got fucked.
Well, they saw the Haunted Mansion
these days.
They saw the Haunted Mansion trailer. They were right, like, yeah. Well, no offense, but I admit he's only made a few films. But when I look at Justin Simeon's films and television work, it doesn't scream, yeah, let's have him do a sci-fi series. And
well, he's also asking to do a Captain EO reboot, which I am actually in favor of.
Okay. You and maybe the state of Michael Jackson.
Well, if you do it in honor of Michael and not mock it or anything, if you can kind of do it serious, maybe even cast his nephew in it, if the Michael biopic does well, why not? And have, well, no Lucasfilm. Like, let's see if George could come back and maybe do something with it.
I just do not see it coming. I know Francis Ford Coppola won't be coming back.
Sophia Coppola can direct it.
No. Let it go.
Father.
I am no Captain EO. No. I'm actually more interested in the Lando series now that Donald Glover and his brother are writing it. Since, these are the minds behind Atlanta. So I know it's really going to be out there. So.
Well, again, Donald Glover was going to do that Deadpool series for FX. What happened with that shit?
Well, he wrote the episode, he did the pilot, and then FX was like, no, this is too weird.
Any news that comes out of Lucasfilm, you take with a grain of salt, unless they actually show something that's a trailer.
Well, I think that Rey movie will actually be made.
I don't think it will, but we'll see in 3 years.
Okay, so that is all the news stories we have this week. Now we have to talk about the tragedies of the week. 3 noted actors passed away this week. Angus Cloud, supporting star or star of Euphoria, died of a drug overdose this week. Euphoria was really the only credit he had, but he was one of the more charismatic and strangely good characters of the whole show. So it's sad to hear about him passing at 25, no less. And I'm sure there would have been, plenty of opportunities for him in film and television in the future.
Yeah, for the little bit that I've seen of Euphoria, he was very authentic, very real, and he just was natural in that performance as what was his character, Fresco, or how you say
Fez.
Fez, yeah, his definitely one of the standouts in that series, and I definitely could have seen this guy go a lot further beyond that. It really is a sad shame.
Yes, so rest in peace to him. Also, noted character actor Mark Margolis died at 83 years old. A lot of you might remember, well, for the people who love gangster movies, they might remember him from Scarface as the guy who was going to blow up the car full of children until Tony kills him and sets his own fate up. For me, I was introduced to him through a television show on HBO called Oz, where he played one of the Italian gangsters. He was in most of Darren Aronofsky's movies, starting with Pie, Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain. Andre probably will remember him from Delta Force 2, the Colombian connection.
Actually, no, my introduction to him was Ace Ventura as the landlord.
Yeah, see, another blink and you miss them role. I won't say early.
Oh, no, but it was like midway.
Yeah, he was like well into his career at that point. He was also in Flawless with Robert De Niro and Philip Seymour Hoffman. I mean, tons of movies, usually shot in New York. A lot of you might remember him from Breaking Bad. You know, that was another infamous performance. Or Hardball with Keanu Reeves, where he teaches those kids to play Little League Baseball.
He had a recurring role on the original Equalizer series. He was one of Robert McCall's allies, who I think was in his agency, and he was always like getting help from him.
Yeah, he did a lot of television work, but
yeah,
he was also in a lot of movies. He was in Glory. He was in Eddie Macon's Run.
Yeah.
I Shot Andy Warhol. Yeah, he was just always one of those guys who was either going to be creepy, dangerous, or funny creepy, you know, like ridiculous. He was in a movie that a friend of mine directed. I can't remember the name of it, but it was about a trans character, and he was the grandfather and the only person in the family who accepted, you know, the main character in this film. And Laverne Cox was in it, and you know, I was just shocked to see him in the film. You know, but he's like he's like a New York staple. It's like somebody. Yeah. Like a neighborhood old person who you'd always pass and be like, I wonder what his story is. You know, so, you know, rest in peace. Great career, great man. And the biggest loss this week that everybody is feeling in the entertainment world is actor Paul Reubens, a.k.a. Pee-wee Herman, passed away after a bout with cancer. And, you know, we all know him as Pee-wee Herman. I mean, as a kid, I loved him. But that was why whenever I saw him as a kid in other stuff, it was so shocking. Because it would be like in Cheech and Chong movies, you know. It was like, what's Pee-wee Herman doing in this movie? Or this really, it's not bad, but it's silly, Pandemonium. It's this spoof of horror films. Mm-hmm. And, like, one of the Smothers brothers actually plays the Canadian Mountie hero. And Paul Reubens is actually, like, his assistant or sidekick. And it's just really weird. But I like that he was the voice in Flight of the Navigator. He was the spaceship. One of my favorites as a kid, Midnight Madness, he was in. And I remember, the Blues Brothers as one of the waiters. And,
right, yeah.
And the most shocking role was when he was Pee-wee Herman in Back to the Beach. And the musical scene, and he said bitchin'. And I was just like, Pee-wee curses? But yeah, I mean, I grew up like everybody else watching Pee-wee's Playhouse, you know, watching Big Top Pee-wee. And even when they released the Pee-wee Herman movies on Netflix later, and they digitally like made him younger, I even watched those. Didn't quite love him as much as the originals, but you know, at least he was out there trying. I never, unfortunately, got to see him do Pee-wee's Playhouse on Broadway. You know, the more recent one. But I mean, when you sometimes watch the original, I guess, theatrical version of Pee-wee's Playhouse, you're shocked at how kind of a little dirty it is, you know? Because I even remember once when he was on Arsenio Hall, and he came out, him and Arsenio started eating cereal, and he took out this doll that was a radio, but it was a naked woman, and her breasts were the dials. So he's like twisting the nipples, and I'm like, is this allowed on television? So it's always like, he always had that innocence, but also that naughty, perverse side to him, too. Which is why it wasn't, well, at least not to me, too shocking when he got arrested for, you know, being in the porn theater and public indecency. But, you know, I never really turned my back on him. Like, I like that kind of, it didn't quite kill Pee-wee, but it killed that side of him because then he became character actor du jour. You know, he was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was in Murphy Brown as the head of the network's nephew, who was like obsessed with Murphy, and I think he might have won an Emmy for that. And trying to think, Blow with Johnny Depp, you know, and of course playing Oswald Cobblepot's father, not only in Batman Returns, but even in the series Gotham.
It was crazy. Nobody recognized him when that movie came out.
Exactly. I mean, it was more of a cameo, but still.
Yeah.
I was just like amazing. I'm sure that didn't help when parents had that backlash against the movie, and they're like, and they even involved Pee-wee. You know, but yeah, he's just one of those guys. If you grew up of a certain time, and even if not, I think you just something about him you always liked or found interesting. You know.
Yeah, he was one of my early heroes as a small child. You know, Big Top Pee-wee was one of the first movies that my parents took me to see in the theater. That and Short Circuit 2, unfortunately. But I remember enjoying it at the time. You know, I thought it was a cute little film, and I was like everybody else. I watched Pee-wee's Playhouse on Saturday mornings. I had the play set with the figures. I had the talking doll. You know, I watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure when it was on video. Used to get scared at the large Marge scene like everybody else in America. I love the fact that he still stayed close to Tim Burton all those years afterwards and doing the cameos. And I think he did the voice in Frankenweenie. He did like he did like a number of other projects. I think he played one of the voices in Nightmare Before Christmas. He was one of the henchmen for Oogie Boogie. And, you know, there was Mystery Men. I thought that was going to be like a little comeback for him. It wasn't. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, yeah, you know, like when the whole indecency thing happened and he had to, you know, obviously get away from the character for a while, I think I appreciated him more to see that he had other sides of him. And then seeing later on more of like the old HBO specials and the Cheech and Chong appearances he made, it was like, yeah, this guy could do a lot, whether he was Pee-wee or not. And the fact that he probably was more appreciated as he got older, that he was able to go back to it and kind of poke fun at himself. And that sort of kiddie image that he had was something that was nostalgic, but also like, now I get it. Now I kind of get the joke. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he was definitely a one-of-a-kind talent that could do really no wrong, and they'd still make his figures now. They did those reaction figures from Pee-wee's Playhouse, so he still has that nostalgia. And let's also not forget, we don't ever talk about this, think about the careers he pushed through Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh yeah,
Lawrence Fishburne as Cowboy Curtis.
Jimmy Smith
Singleton was a production assistant on Pee-wee's Playhouse. That's how he got him in Boys in the Hood to play Cuba Gooding Jr.'s father. So he also had a hand in a number of people who later on, E.G. Daily, Penelope Ann Miller, who was in Big Top Pee-wee, like a lot of people that nobody really knew who got their start around him. That's kind of significant. And, you know, for that, I thank Paul Reubens for the career and for just making our childhoods that special.
And don't forget Phil Hartman.
Him and Phil Hartman, how they collaborated, and then Phil Hartman, like, of course, they had a parting of the ways that was kind of strained, but Phil Hartman became a legend in his own right thanks to his collaborations with Paul Reubens.
Exactly, and it's just an expansive career, and it's just like,
I can't hear the song Tequila without thinking of the scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I used to have a poster from Muppet Magazine with Kermit dressed up as Pee-wee doing the dance, the tequila dance. So,
his only career misstep was not the incident in the theater; it was the PSA for crack.
Well, that's not something you want to see. Does crack even exist in your world? You know, I even didn't mind his guest starring role on 227. Where he played
Yeah, we forgot to mention that. He was on 227, and there was another show I think he appeared on around that time, too.
I have no. I imagine it must have been a kid show. I kind of always, even though I wasn't as
probably.
big of an Ernest fan, I kind of always wanted them to come together, like
Me
for a
too.
you know,
Or to do a movie together, like, because you had all the Ernest movies, and then Pee-wee was doing his thing. I feel like if that incident hadn't happened, somebody had to be writing a Pee-wee and Ernest collaboration. Because that I would have paid to see that, or begged my parents to see that as a kid.
Kids definitely would have. Somewhere there's that script just sitting around.
And I gotta say too, Jim Varney was awesome.
He was a good actor. I can't say I loved Ernest always. Like the only one I like is Ernest Goes to Camp. That's the only Ernest movie I can really stand.
I liked Ernest Scared Stupid. That actually was kind of enjoyable.
Nah, I could only take Ernest when he was in commercials. That was the only. But I did see
the show too, and I had the doll.
The only other Jim Varney, I guess, role I ever saw him play was in a movie called Fast Food, where he plays the villain. That's the only other one I've really seen. I didn't even see Beverly Hillbillies, the movie, so.
And he was in that terrible Three Ninjas sequel with Hulk Hogan.
Another movie I did not see. See, I can say
Lonnie Anderson's henchman.
See, I can say I've seen most of Paul Reubens' work. Jim Varney, I'm like, it's spotty. That I've seen.
Beverly Hillbillies wasn't bad.
Which one?
Beverly Hillbillies, the movie version.
I was never a fan of the show, so when the movie came out, I'm just like, it's just like not for me. But getting back to Paul Reubens, yes, definitely a person who will be, because part of the fun of Paul Reubens was you never knew where he was going to pop up in something, and it wasn't like one of these people like, oh, Paul Reubens is part of this show, or Paul Reubens is part of this movie. So it was always like, oh, you saw him, it's like, oh my God, he's in this, and so definitely, rest in peace. He will be missed by many.
I love you, Pee-wee.
And now we move on to the trailer portion of the show. And boy, do we have a bunch. First, we must talk about Dicks, the musical. This new musical from A24 starring Nathan Lane, Megan Mullally, Megan the Stallion, and two twin brothers who I've never heard of before. And it's directed by Larry Charles, who directed Borat. I'm a musical fan, and I usually like this sort of thing, but I was just like, and like, it's something, like when somebody tries too hard to be controversial and it doesn't have the effect it's supposed to. That's what this trailer felt like to me. Like, I should be like, yeah, I can't wait to see this, but now it just feels like, you're trying way too hard. I can wait for this if I ever watch it on streaming. I'm not probably going to pay for this, I don't. That's how I feel about trailer. How do you feel?
I feel like it tries too hard. Also, it kind of had the same vibe as the movie Bros. Like, it's trying to really highlight these two brothers that I've never heard of these guys until I saw this thing. I only saw, Megan Thee Stallion's in this. I thought it was like a movie for her. And then all of a sudden I see these two guys who I guess also directed this. I mean, I think for a certain audience, it'll probably do well, but with Bros and Dear Evan Hansen, it's going to have a niche audience, I think.
Yeah, because this feels like A24 is a repeat of Bodies. Almost, except more fanfare and hoping for more controversy. I mean, it's obviously for a certain audience, which would explain everything being so flamboyant in it. And I hope it does find its audience, but I can tell this is like one of those movies where it's not for me. It's trying way too hard, and I like all the stars who are so far advertised in it. I like Nathan Lane. I like Megan Mullally. I love Megan Thee Stallion. but still, it's not rubbing me the right way. Where I'm like, I have to go see this. Yes, pun intended. The next one is a trailer we have seen way back to when we went to go see Renfield, The Last Voyage of Demeter, which is about, a bunch of, I guess, pirates, or we call them seamen, going putting on cargo. And then, of course, one of that cargo is a vampire. It might even be the Dracula, considering I think this is based on a chapter from Dracula, the original book. And the interesting spin they put on this is they have an African-American, I guess, star or hero. I will say, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, okay, this can go straight to streaming. But the more I've seen the trailer and the more I think of the story, I'm kind of interested in seeing it. Still don't know if I'd see it necessarily in theaters, but I definitely want to see it eventually.
I'm intrigued by it, although it did sort of steal an idea that a friend of mine came up with. Not the exact thing, but the idea of the vampires and that period of history with pirates. It looks interesting. Very curious why they cast Black Steven Seagal to be in this movie, but it looks interesting.
That guy some more credit. He's a better actor than that.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. It's just a shame that 24 reboot didn't work out for him, because I thought he had the chops for something like that. No, it looks interesting. It definitely has like that Blumhouse horror movie feel. Different idea to have it be set in a pirate ship. I might check it out. If I'm really bored, because I got this free popcorn thing for AMC, maybe I might just go see it one day if I got nothing to do.
Yeah, and the female lead in that, I know I saw her in another movie. She has this weird desperation stare that kind of intrigues me. So she's another reason why I would like to go see this movie. Our next trailer is another movie. I'm sure if anybody has been to the cinema in recent months has seen this trailer so many times. Strays, which is, a talking dog movie with Jamie Foxx and Will Ferrell, and Will Forte plays one of the humans. And it just feels like this year's Good Boys, let's make an R-rated comedy with something that we don't usually see cursing. I know, talking dogs. And, hey, I'm happy Jamie Foxx is making his comeback, from being sick, but I'm just like, this just ain't it. This is, again, one of those movies you'll just watch on streaming because there's nothing else on, I just don't see myself really going to the theater to go see this. And
this is essentially an R-rated Homeward Bound. That's the approach that they're taking. But yeah, it's another movie that feels like it's more of a streaming film. It probably will do only as good as
Good Boys.
Good Boys, but also that movie that Seth Rogen did with the talking sausage.
Oh, Sausage Party, which they're trying to make into a series.
Yeah, I mean, like that joke only goes so far. Like, if you love dogs, you'll probably go out and see it and think it's funny as hell. But yeah, talking, cursing animals, we've kind of done this already. There's nothing really. This is why comedies are struggling so much in theaters right now. It's just they're desperate for new ideas, and there's not as many funny comedians these days.
You don't think the Marley and Me crowd will save this movie?
I'm sure they'll probably come out, but, it's not doing it for me, man. Oh, he's going to try to bite his master's balls off. Okay.
Hey, he has a mission statement. We know it has to happen in Act 3 already. Next, we have, while we're going through the old, we have the latest, I think the Marvels trailer, where, we understand, I guess, how the extension of their powers, that basically every time they use it, they switch wherever the locations are. Sort of like Portal. It's only unintentional. Look, I still have faith in this movie. I might even go see it in the theater. But I will admit, the only reason that is making me have some faith in it, other than, I like Brie Larson, but the girl who starred in the television series, she seems to be the whole, I would say, passion and energy behind this film. And so I'm willing to go see it for her, but then that also makes it feel like this is a movie made for that Miss Marvel show audience too. Like, this is their, like, as a comic book fan, you remember how every summer they have an annual so that the writers and artists could have the summer off. That's what this movie feels like for that show. Like, here's the annual where we're going to bring all the Marvels all together. And
I'm going to be pretty honest here. This might be the first Marvel movie that I might sit out on and wait for it on Disney Plus. I couldn't get into Miss Marvel, even though the actress Iman Vellani is very good. Miss Marvel didn't do it for me. Secret Invasion, which was supposed to be the lead up, was not what I had hoped that would be. I thought that was a complete letdown. And so I'm not seeing anything with this that gets me excited. Yes, I was excited for Captain Marvel when it first came out. I was one of those guys that ran out and saw it because of the 90s setting, and I thought Brie Larson would be amazing in the part. But now I'm really beginning to feel that Marvel fatigue. I'm tired of these subpar movies being done in ways that are just simply like there's no quality control. Everything is being done on autopilot, and they're trying to force the humor on one hand, and on the other hand, they want to try to play it too serious, and then it's dry and boring, and there's no real like balance between the two. And so this is just, it's not just a problem with the Marvels itself, it's just a larger problem with the MCU that needs to be fixed ASAP. Or we may have to start really talking about maybe using Secret Wars as a potential way into a reboot of the entire MCU, because that's how bad I think this is getting. Unless Deadpool saves it, or some project we don't even know that comes along and is like surprising everybody, I think this is really the point where the magic of the MCU is really beginning to take a dive. And that's not like me echoing like these right-wing neurotic type folks that are saying, oh, the MCU is dead. No, I'd like for this movie to actually be really good and do well and maybe shut those guys up. But at the same time, I'm also seeing some justification to say there is a problem and it's got to be addressed by Kevin Feige and company, or else you're going to see more of a dive with these future projects that are coming up.
Well, see, that's why, luckily for me, not luckily, but as soon as it was, what was it, the Immortals? And
the Eternals.
That's when I started, like, really, like, being like, okay, I don't need to see each and every one of them. And I've so far been lucky. I didn't really miss any of the essential ones in theaters, so I was able to just wait. The only... Like, even the only more recent one I saw in the theater was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Other than that, like Ant-Man, it was like, yeah, I can wait. Stuff like that. So, but I will say the Marvels, this one might actually get me to go to a theater, depending what else is out at the time.
Their hope is that it could be another Barbie, that it's going to get the girls out.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, I don't think it'll make $1 billion, but it should be a modest success.
We'll see.
Next we have Gran Turismo, based on is it a video game?
Yeah, the PlayStation game.
I never really knew about this. The only reason I even had any inklings of it was having David Harbour play the, I guess, coach in this movie. And I'm just like, it wasn't going to be a movie I was going to see in the first place, and it still isn't a movie. Because it seems like basically the storyline is a kid who learns race car driving from a video game, then gets put through the ringer of learning to be a race car driver in real life. And so, I'm just like, it's not my cup of tea. And
I played the original Gran Turismo when the PlayStation 1 was out, So I actually do remember kind of enjoying it. I didn't play the others that came after that. I was a little surprised when I saw the trailer. Like you, I only knew that David Harbour was in it. They had a couple of big people. I didn't know that they were going to take a true story of a kid who actually played the game so much he became a real race car driver. That kind of shocked me. So this is like that Clint Eastwood movie where he got the real soldiers to reenact them stopping terrorists on a train. So that was quite shocking to see. It looks like another Days of Thunder. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be just a passable movie, but I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this. It's like Blue Beetle. If I'm bored, maybe I'll go see it, but other than that, it doesn't look like anything extraordinary that, oh my God, this is going to make $1 billion. No.
And isn't it directed by Neil Blomkamp?
Neil Blomkamp, yes, who was supposed to do that Alien sequel that he had all the artwork for and never got made. He was going to do a new RoboCop, and that wound up not getting made. So I guess it was like the concession. We'll do Gran Turismo. So it's like a step down from District 9.
So now we're coming on to a few more recent trailers that have been out. The Wonka trailer has finally been released. Starring Timothée Chalamet, directed by Paul King, who directed the Paddington movies. I have somewhat faith. He's not my Wonka. So it's sort of like, he's not my 007. Timothée, I can see he's going more for, whimsy more than anything than, trying to repeat anybody's performance. I'll give the movie a chance, and having Paul King behind the camera gives me a little bit of hope for this film. Of course, Hugh Grant had to be in it, as an Oompa Loompa. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, this seems to be his new thing, being the comedic relief in all these movies. So why not? I know there was controversy. Why didn't they get a real little person for the role? It's just like, because Hugh Grant's name puts more butts in seats. That, if we're being honest, But yeah, I have nothing wrong with it. It's one of those I'll wait and see, but most likely I will probably check the movie out in theaters. And
yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, yeah, Timothée Chalamet is no Gene Wilder. I don't think anybody will ever, even Johnny, as much as I love Johnny Depp, nobody can hold a candle to Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka, hands down. I'm not going to get into the Oompa Loompa thing, because then I have to get into Snow White, and then I'll get a whole shitty rant about that. But I do have one gripe, and forgive me if it comes off just a little bit racist, even for somebody like me as an African American. But why are there black people in this movie? Especially like African American people in London or wherever this is supposed to be set.
London.
Yeah, why are there black American people in London in this movie? It just...
They can't be in London,
on this shit.
It's not like it's the 18 or 1700s. It's the 20s and 30s.
Yeah, but you have to explain that to me. So you have black people moving to London at that time who become friends with Willy Wonka. Like, at least with the witches, they were able to explain this is Louisiana in 1975 or whatever that was supposed to be. At least that made sense for a Roald Dahl adaptation. What the fuck is going on here that we have to have black people in London in 1935?
I think they just immigrated there, and and also I think since it's not a political movie, I think it's also just showing diversity and putting a more people of color in sci-fi and fantasy films.
But could we just create our own sci-fi fantasy movie with black leads that isn't some white guy's property? Can't we just have that for once?
Property. I think they just know him. Well, we try, but then unfortunately, a lot of people then don't go see the films, or only African Americans see the film, or it gets accused of being the black version of, instead of just being something natural. So,
But do you remember when Disney would make a movie like Cool Runnings and all the, we all ran out to see that because it made us proud? What happened to that? Why do we have to have
the
black
air
people
up
play
there
these
happened. That's what
marginalized roles in white people's movies? What is wrong with the studios that they think that's how we have progression in this country? No, I want something more stronger than that. That doesn't play into this idea, oh, we're being woke. No, just give us something that makes us proud, not like a supporting character that's underwritten and you think you're checking a box.
Well, I don't think it's that serious as you do. I am happy for inclusion. And unfortunately, I know that studios are not going to pay that much money for an African American, fantasy epic. I mean, even like Haunted Mansion, that bomb, and they tried to make that, more African American and diverse. And
if that's the case, remake Meteor Man.
Oh no, they need the rights. But there is I think there's a comic book of Meteor Man out there.
There's a 6-part comic book that Marvel did where they actually put him in the not MCU, but in the Marvel universe with Spider-Man and X-Men and the rest of them. And it was pretty good.
Well, maybe Robert Townsend, maybe he'll start a GoFundMe
Robert, come on the show. I'm serious.
For Meteor Man 2.
Next, I'm all for it.
Next, we have The Retirement Plan, which takes Jeff Bridges' show, The Old Man, and puts Nicolas Cage in it in a movie form where, where he has a group of assassins going after him, and we find out, oh no, Grandpa used to be an assassin, so he's protecting his family from a group of assassins, and it gives Nicolas Cage a reason to have a long-haired wig again. So basically, it's almost like that Allison Janney film on Netflix, except it probably moves faster because his his granddaughter and I guess his daughter-in-law are both African American who he's protecting against these group of assassins. I'm like, this still feels like one of the movies Nicolas Cage would have made when he was making straight-to-home video stuff.
But you know something? I watched this trailer and I kind of had the same sense that, oh, this is just going to be another one of those straight-to-video movies. I was thoroughly entertained by this. I'm like, holy shit, it's crazy-ass Nicolas Cage, like an old man kicking ass, and you got Ernie Hudson kicking ass. I kind of want to see this. This actually looks pretty good. I'd actually pay money to see this in the theater.
No, me, I'm like, I can wait for streaming. Oh,
Come on, the Cage Resurgence is happening, man.
I don't think with this movie it is. I mean, I expected
but come on, Cage. Nick freaking Cage.
All that was missing was Aiden Quinn coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Boss. That's the only thing that's missing from this film. This feels like Liam Neeson turned it down, so they went to Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, because Liam Neeson said, oh, there's comedy in it.
And he's like, I don't know how to do that properly, so it's not for me.
It's improvisational comedy, no.
I'm like, no, this one I can skip. Next we have Uma Thurman and Samuel L. Jackson reunited in the movie no one was looking for, The Kill Room, where Samuel L. Jackson is, I guess, a manager of an assassin played by Joe Manganiello, and they need a way to hide their money. So they decide to put it into art, where Joe Manganiello makes these pieces, and then they'll give the pieces to Uma Thurman, who will sell it, and it'll clean their money. The problem is that he becomes an art superstar, and a notorious one. Yes, this is a movie coming out in theaters, people. And this goes up there with Mama Mafia. And, Uma Thurman is obviously the art dealer. Samuel L. Jackson is the, I guess, manager who's trying to copy my beard. Joe Manganiello got a haircut to play the artist. Maya Hawke is in there for some reason. I'm guessing puts more butts in seats. And blast from the past, Debbie Mazur is the art critic who wants to get to the bottom of this story. And I'm never upset when Debbie Mazur's in a film. I know she's probably pissed at Marissa Tomei because she should have probably played My Cousin Vinny. But this is something, again, I can wait to watch. This has Netflix written all over it for some reason. All that's missing is more action. But I'll give it a chance, even though the last time Uma Thurman reunited with somebody from Pulp Fiction, it was called Be Cool, and I did not like that movie at all. So, but,
my only few thoughts on it, I thought the trailer was confusing. I didn't know what this whole thing was about. It was just giving me vibes of the Thomas Crown Affair, but just maybe not as strong, even though some people love Thomas Crown Affair, some people don't. And also, Uma Thurman needs a new agent. She's too talented to be doing crap like this and that Grandpa movie with Robert De Niro. Like, what happened to you? You did Kill Bill. You did, was she in Dangerous Liaisons?
Yeah, when she was young.
You were doing some Pulp Fiction. You were doing some amazing movies. Now they're giving you crap. You should be doing much better.
We haven't seen the movie yet. It could be good. She was in this house
agent, and what's he getting these days?
Hey, she was in the house that Jack built with Matt Dillon.
Which nobody saw because it was too damn long.
I like that movie. Her and her daughter both need her ex-husband's agent, Ethan Hawke, because he's in everything. You still have a good relationship with him. Talk to him about his agent. Yeah, because he's getting work. You should be getting better than this. And what is it? Yeah. That television show like Takers or something about con artists that she was in. And I'm like, everybody in this film deserves that. I would say Samuel Jackson, but he's known to just take paychecks. So
if there's money, he's doing it.
Yeah, it's like he's this generation's Christopher Walken. So it's like, how did he not end up in freaking Dune Part 2? Samuel L. Jackson.
That's a very good question.
Like, were they like, nah, we got Christopher Walken, we don't need you.
Or maybe you just can't say motherfucker in Dune.
He could have been like one of the slave revolt leaders.
Zendaya's father.
I strangely think that might be Javier Bardem in the movie.
I know, yeah, but they could make up. She's half black.
I know. So, what, she has two fathers? Where did the mother come in? And she was just like, I'll just mix sperm and have this weird blue-eyed baby.
In this day and age, that's not an impossibility.
I'm like, hey, it's a sci-fi movie. Anything is possible. It could just be like, all they had to do was both snap their fingers and she was pregnant. Who knows? Next, we have... no, I shouldn't say that. But Till Death Do Us Part. Which, it seems more... It's trying to go for horror, but it feels like an action movie. Like, what if Samara Weaving's character had run from that rich family, and they just all the groomsmen decide to attack her. Now, talk about inclusion. There's a little person in this movie for no reason other than it seems to be kicked and be comedic relief. But damn it, do I want to see it?
It's funny. When I was watching, I was a little shocked because the girl that plays the bride that's kicking everybody's ass, I actually know her. She actually reached out to me about 2 years ago about one of my projects, and I told her it wasn't even ready yet. So I guess she kind of blew up, which is pretty cool. I kind of had a little moment with somebody that has kind of taken off a little bit. I think the thing that kind of surprises me, okay, you got all these groomsmen that are out to kill her, and you have Orlando Jones as one of them. Like, what's the inspiration behind that? I know, like, he could do serious and he could do comedy, but we're also going to cast, like, is this a Peter Hyams movie? Like, we're going to cast him as a serious asshole?
Well, considering looking at the cast, he's one of the biggest names in the cast.
Yeah.
They needed somebody who was recognizable, other than, I guess, the guy who's the main villain, who has always plays like those cheesecake roles or good-looking villains. And there's no easier way to say it. He's always like, he's the male hoe of every film he's in.
From now on, whoever he is, every time we see him in a movie, he's going to be the cheesecake guy.
Exactly, because you know he's going to either be romancing somebody or he might date rape somebody. He's going to be either or. And maybe he's getting too old to date rape, so now they gave him your full-fledged
cheesecake guy.
Hey, I still remember him from Easy. It was Easy A. He was in Christina Aguilera's movie Burlesque, and he was in one of those. Wasn't he in one of those like no back down, no way out, or one of those like MMA fighting movies where
Never back down.
Yeah, like I think he was like one of the main villains in one of those. So that's how I always see him. I'm like, oh, I don't trust that dude. And for some odd reason, he will have his shirt off somewhere in this movie. He's like the guy from Light It Up, Robert Richard. Remember, he used to always have all these roles all of a sudden with his shirt off for no reason. It's like, or Michael Jai White, but at least Michael Jai White was fighting. These guys just take their shirt off and like, it's hot.
Well, they do that now with the black dude that was in Boys in the... Oh, Morse Chestnut. Every movie he does... I thought you were going to say Cuba Gooding Jr. I'm like, oh, hell no. No.
You're like, put
no,
your
Morse
shirt
Chestnut,
on.
you can put him in a bad movie, but black women will come out.
Morse Chestnut. He's the zaddy. Surprisingly, he's not in that Wesley Snipes stripper movie.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Hey, I was about to say, Phase on Love gotta work too, So, the next trailer I have down is a movie finally a Ridley Scott movie I want to see, Napoleon, and I am really looking forward to this with Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon. I mean, you still have that 8-part series that was supposed to be a Stanley Kubrick movie coming out that Steven Spielberg is behind. But I am really looking forward to the condensed version with Napoleon. Joaquin Phoenix doesn't look as foolish as all those pictures from the set that they used earlier this year. He looks pretty badass in this. And, he has, his many Josephine and his other lovers. And just that battle scene where they're, all circling. And then they discover they're on ice and then the cannons. I'm like, I might actually check this out in theater. So I'm looking forward to this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it actually looks more like a romantic film than it does a war movie. But I think, hey, Ridley Scott, Joaquin Phoenix, why not? Check it out.
Yeah, I am behind it. I am really looking forward to it. Which also brings us to our last trailer, which is kind of a reboot of a franchise with Exorcist Believer. Which, Ellen Burstyn has come back for. And obviously, in a way to try and get more of a African-American audience, this is where the story is centered around, African-American family in this film. And you know what? My question is, will it have anything to do with Exorcist the series that John Cho was on Channel 5? That was actually pretty good.
Probably not.
It seems like this is the same freaking demon from the original Exorcist. I'm just like, you ain't got nothing else to do. Nobody else pushed ahead of the line to start possessing people other than this demon. But I will say, the trailer looks really good that I'd even be enticed to go see it in theaters.
I'm not even going to complain about the diversity in this movie because the more that I think about it, you have the Africa opening of the original Exorcist, so there could be some tie-in with that. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm like you. I'm a little bit split because there's a part of me that sees this trailer like, I kind of want to see this. You know, I wasn't crazy about Exorcist 2. 3 was actually decent despite its problems, and I never saw the prequel, or either version of the prequels that Rennie Harlan and Paul Schrader did. So there's a part of me that wants to see it, but then I'm also worried it's going to fall into that same trap like a lot, like Halloween and some of the others, where it's a requel where we bring back an original character to keep it tied to the original movie, and it's not going to be as good. You know, like they'll probably kill off Ellen Burstyn. They'll probably maybe set up Linda Blair to show up before the movie's over. They're hinting, oh yeah, you know, she's not in this, but she'll probably make an appearance somewhere. Hope for this movie, no Corey, no twist where we're thinking this is an Exorcist movie and then it goes into a complete 180 left turn and this is something else entirely. Other than that, I think it has the potential to be the best sequel of The Exorcist if they do it the right way.
Well, no offense, that's not exactly a hard thing to do. No. But I mean, like I said, I have faith in the film that it will be quality. It won't be like a cash in. You know, there's no cheesecake in this, so there's hope for this movie. So, but yeah, I'll probably check it out. You know, so well, unfortunately, that ends this episode's business and our business for this week. But as you know, we always have unfinished business. But I have to ask: have you seen Winter Kills? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
Have you seen the movie? Damn, I don't have anything today.
Yeah, okay. So Andre is at a loss for words for a recommendation this week. So we shall see you next episode. And until then, not the balcony is closed, but the theater is closed.